This is your daily dose of all things royal. I smell desperation. Welcome back, my gorgeous, good-looking friends. There is a massive coordinated effort happening right in front of our eyes to completely rehabilitate the narrative on Meghan Markle. We've been watching this slow turn on the Titanic for a while, but honestly, the iceberg had hit back in 2021, and this ship is going down. I don't think this couple's reputation is at all salvageable, especially with Meghan Markle. And if you think the PR spin has been bad, wait until you see what's dropping on June 18th. A brand new book called Divide and Rule is hitting shelves, written by Catherine Mayer, who, by the way, is an American-born British author, journalist, and leftist activist. This woman has built a prominent career in journalism, including roles as Europe's editor at Time magazine, and co-founded the Women's Equality Party in 2015, serving as its president until the party dissolved in 2024. Catherine Mayer has written several books, including the 2015 biography, Charles, the Heart of a King. It had been rumored that the palace was involved in helping with this book. Do I think this is a coincidence that she has now chosen to write this book? I don't think so. We know that the palace used Omid Scobie to play the media game for Meghan in writing Finding Freedom, and now it looks like they're deploying a new player to fix the failed narrative of a woman we are all calling Meghan Markle. But here is what the dark, shadowy forces behind the devious duo can't stand. And that's people like me on social media. The internet has completely broken the royal family's control over the narrative, and the machine right now is hustling to repair the mess they made. Today, we're going to look at the latest propaganda and the gaslighting to those who have witnessed this saga from the beginning. Go ahead and grab a drink, get comfortable, and before we dive into this web of PR spin, make sure you hit that like button and double check that you're still subscribed, because you know how YouTube loves to quietly unsubscribe people from this channel. Okay, let's look at this excerpt that was released in the Daily Mail yesterday for the upcoming book Divide and Rule, Royal Women and Their Battles, examining royal women from Anne Boleyn to the present day. Headline: The warning signs everyone missed that Meghan marrying into the royal family was doomed to end in disaster. From her Californian background to her and Harry's shared personality traits, the clues were obvious from the start, says Catherine Mayer in a riveting new book. It looks like a fairy tale, and in many ways it is, for this turns out to be a story full of jeopardy. Deceptively traditional in silk and tulle, Meghan pauses on the steps at St. George's Chapel and waves to the cheering crowds. Inside, royalty lines the pews. I don't know about you, but if you go back and you look at some of these pictures, Harry doesn't look too thrilled, especially like here. He looks like, what did I just do? Right? The Tudor Henrys are buried here. So too Jane Seymour, Edward VII, and in an annex, George VI and Princess Margaret. Over bones and dust, Meghan glides towards her groom. Does she take Harry for richer or for poorer? The new Duke of Sussex turns pink with happiness. Like, when you go back and you look at how ridiculous this wedding was, you start to think, was this a humiliation ritual? You know, many people have said that Meghan chose not to have a carpet because she wanted the red carpet, not the blue one. Yeah, I think it might be something different. Now, looking at this photo, could this be symbolism to the Freemasons or the Masonic sign? Let's think about this for a second. We know how these so-called royals love their symbolism. And when you look at the number 33, who was 33? It was Prince Harry. Now, I'm not saying that that has anything to do with the mess that we see in front of us, but it's just, something to think about. Looking at this whole stupid black ops, you have to question, was this even real? A hereditary monarchy is an unlikely engine of change, But the family's first biracial member, first declared feminists, and, in a sign of institutional shift, the first divorcee permitted to marry a Windsor in the Church of England, seems to hint at progress. Maybe Meghan will be able to use her new position for good. Like, looking at these pictures, there's just something so diabolical about this woman. Yeah, there was just so much about this wedding that just didn't make any kind of sense. I click on the screen, scroll back, study the footage again. To revisit these scenes is to peer down the wrong end of a telescope, the optimism of that day as distant as the moon, or at least California, where the Sussexes have lived in exile since 2020. How did the dream crumble? Even those of us who warned, "Don't do it," Di, back in the 1980s, somehow dared to imagine a better outcome for Meghan Markle when she married into the royal family in 2018. She is different, we told ourselves. We weren't wrong, but that difference would count against her. How on earth did so many people who saw what happened to Princess Diana fall for the princess myth yet again? I remember the day Diana died in 1997. After a colleague woke me with the news of a car crash in Paris, I headed to Buckingham Palace. A hotel worker pointed to the building and told me they killed her. Over the following days, that accusation gained currency, but few meant it literally. Angered, centered on perceptions that the royal family hung Diana out to dry. Back then, and throughout my years as a writer and editor at America's Time magazine, frequently covering royal matters, I agreed that the Windsors had contributed to Diana's vulnerability. But it was only recently, researching my new book, which looks at the lives and roles played by 8 royal women, from Anne Boleyn to Kate, the current Princess of Wales, that I finally grasped the nature of the most significant forces that placed Diana in the back of a speeding limousine. These forces were not the scenarios imagined by conspiracy theorists. Rather, they were the reflexes of patriarchal systems, including the patrimonarchy, to defend their power structures and hierarchies. In 1997, I remained dry-eyed. Now, I weep for Diana and the damage such forces continue to inflict. I have no intention of championing Meghan over Kate, but I'm fascinated by how and why their public images came to be so at odds. Like Meghan and Harry's every moment of the Kate and William's wedding in 2011, which I live blogged for Time, was choreographed to showcase the future of the monarchy while emphasizing its continuity with the past. The marriage was a marketing triumph for the Windsors and, as a popular U.S. blogger noted, for the princess myth. "Little girls dream of being princesses," she wrote. "Grown women seem to retain this childhood fantasy. Just look at the pomp and circumstance surrounding the royal wedding and endless conversation about Princess Kate." The blogger confessed that she identified with a princess too, but one with agency, She-Ra, Princess of Power. The heroine of a 1985 animated series spun off from He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. That blogger was Meghan, writing on the Tig, a website she named after her favorite Tuscan wine. She used her platform to opine on everything from fine food and fashion to gentle activism. 2 years later, she shuttered the site and prepared to put her career on ice, filming her 7th and last series of the legal drama Suits. Shortly afterwards, she and Harry announced their engagement. Would She-Ra really surrender her voice and liberty? I don't see it as giving anything up. I just see it as a change. It's a new chapter, right? Meghan told the BBC's Michelle Hussein. She was proud of her professional achievements, but now it was time to work with Harry as a team to promote causes that are really important to me. Everybody looked set to win. The Windsors finally edging towards the diversity of the populations they are meant to represent. A contented Harry saved from a downward spiral, and Meghan, Princess of Power, handed not a sword, but a global platform for those causes. In those early days, many of her media portraits were enthusiastic. But it was also clear that there was little understanding of Meghan's background. Meghan did not live, as reported, in a gang-scarred area, but in middle-class comfort. Her white father, Thomas Markle, a TV lighting director, met her African-American mother, Doria Raglan, when she was working as a makeup artist on the long-running U.S. soap General Hospital. Okay, let's pause for a second. I want to point out this small detail, but it matters because for how long since the beginning of when Harry and Meghan were dating, the articles about Meghan's mom coming straight out of Compton was the narrative that they kept using to point the finger at the UK being so racist. Never mind that the article was written in Los Angeles, but to use to go on, especially used when they went on to Oprah. And now here you have this leftist author writing that, oh no, Meghan grew up in a middle-class environment. Her father was white, right? Still holding on to the narrative that her mom is black and, she is biracial. But do you see how this could be interpreted as the beginning of slowly changing this narrative? Now Meghan's no longer ashamed of being white. I mean, it's kind of obvious. How much is Meghan really doing with the black community? Not very much recently. And where is Doria? A mixed marriage, like the Markles, was not unusual in LA, nor was racism. In her first Netflix series, Meghan recalled as a child seeing Doria subjected to racial abuse and mistaken for her nanny. Doria, in turn, revealed that she had warned her daughter that fascination with her dating Harry was about race. Race was a factor. So, too, was a misunderstanding of Planet Windsor. Meghan's claim that she had not Googled Harry before their first date attracted skepticism. But no matter how many hours, days, weeks, or years an outsider spent trawling the internet, it could not convey the weirdness and complexity of palace culture. How do you explain that you bow to your grandmother? Harry mused in the same Netflix show. Now picture Meghan plunged into this alien life, servants and aides around all the time, zero privacy. Should she regard staff as potential friends? Would they serve her or spy on her, or, as in Tudor times so often the case, both? Harry has described the royal existence as this surreal state, this unending Truman Show. It is tempting to think that if Meghan had shut up, closed down, worn nude tights, and deferred as if her life depended on it, she might have made a go of things. Let me pause and interject. I think at this point, we just all want her to shut up and go away. There has been nothing but nonstop ridiculousness with this woman. But look more closely at California, the place that shaped her, and you realize that was never going to happen. Just as Americans are apt to conflate the histories and cultures of, say, England and Scotland, so the British talk about the States, with the exception of locations familiar from films and TV shows, as an amorphous blob. To understand Meghan, we need to look to the Golden State. Californians pride themselves on doing things differently. Hard-nosed entrepreneurialism coexists with multiple strands of spiritualism. Positivity is considered, well, a positive. So are career choices and behaviors the British disdainfully label attention-seeking. The entertainment industry is one of the main employers in the state. Contracts include clauses requiring performers to publicize their work, and a significant social media footprint is not an option but a necessity for those who hope to rise. Meghan's creation of the TIG fits into that pattern, as does her brand ambassadorship for the designer Ralph Lauren, and her cultivation of press contacts in the pre-Harry period, all now routinely cited as proof of her insatiable ambition. Emotions and feelings, topics to rattle the teacups in the drawing rooms of those British people posh enough to have drawing rooms, are not merely up for discussion among Californians, but central to conversation. There is a perception that Californians hug more than other Americans, and Meghan once described William and Kate recoiling from her embrace. It came over for dinner, I remember. I was in ripped jeans and I was barefoot, she says. I was a hugger. I've always been a hugger. I didn't realize that is really jarring for a lot of Brits. Another sign that Meghan might not mesh smoothly with the buttoned-up Windsors could be detected during the Sussex's official visit to South Africa. When Tom Bradby inquired how she was coping with the pressures of royal life, she replied, "Thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay. Back home, such an oversight would be unthinkable." She went on to muse that it's not enough to just survive something, right? Like, that's not the point of life. You've got to thrive. You've got to feel happy. This simple, seemingly uncontroversial idea would shake the monarchy, dislodge Harry, and send both of the Sussexes to the place that nurtured it. In common with other public figures, royals tend to envy the upper echelons of popularity, failing to realize that the comfortable middle of the table is the place to be. Harry and Meghan's marriage raised the groom to an all-time peak, fleetingly above Elizabeth II. The bride chartered as high as 6th place. Soon enough, she learned the difference between manageable celebrity and her new level of fame. One opens doors, the other imprisons you. Princess Diana found herself in a similar position, and she too felt suffocated. There's no need to sympathize or connect with Meghan, nor watch her shows or consume news about her. However, like Diana, or indeed Kate, to dismiss her as unimportant is to miss the problem she embodies. Meghan matters, quite simply, because she is one of the most prominent women in the world. Her name recognition charts at 100% in recent multi-country polls, an astonishing level of fame. That she is a woman of color and, rightly or wrongly, associated in the public imagination with particular value sets adds to her significance. To those who clamor for Meghan to be expunged from public like a latter-day Anne Boleyn, I'd ask one question. What exactly has she done to earn such hostility? The Sussex squad suspect her critics of misogyny, racism, or an admixture of the two, misogynoir. Detractors say Meghan has earned their contempt by inflicting reputational damage on the monarchy. Meghan has also been accused by staff of bullying. My book examines these allegations within the context of palace culture, which can be simultaneously hierarchical and dysfunctional. Over the decades, complaints from staff have ranged from racism to SA, all denied and unproven. It is not my intention to minimize the seriousness of the bullying allegations against Meghan, but rather to ask critics whether, in light of the wider context of Windsor failings, including Andrew's behavior, what we know or think we know about her explains the strength of the animosity towards her. Might other factors be at play too? Does her voice grate? Is she simply too Californian? Too politically correct? Too new agey for British tastes? Perhaps resentment towards Meghan stems from her snagging a prince and then forgetting to be grateful. Allow me to interject here. No, it boils down to Meghan being a fraud. The reason why we don't like Meghan Markle is because not only is she deliberately weaponizing the media, but also gaslighting the public. The hypocrisy is off the charts, but there's no mention by this author, of course, because they're trying to rehabilitate her image. It's like, no, it's you who doesn't understand Meghan Markle. That's why you don't like her. It's on you, not because of her behavior. There is also an idea that she is too political. A well-informed source tells me that Meghan does not think of herself as rebellious. In 2018, she cheered the #MeToo movement, not to wage politics, but on the reasonable assumption that ending sexual harassment was a mainstream goal and therefore uncontentious. Something that's never covered in any of these propaganda pieces that the palace commissions, because in my opinion, I believe that the palace is behind this, is the censorship work that these two have been doing. A theory spread by Meghan's antagonistic biographer Tom Bower and others, including the Sun's veteran royal photographer Arthur Edwards, promotes the idea that Meghan duped Harry into believing she would settle for the royal role, while always intending to tear him from the bosom of his family. My own research, which has included conversations with deeply informed sources, produced a different picture. Two people, naively optimistic that they could develop their own interpretations of the royal job, thrown off balance as they hit resistance and swiftly developing a siege mentality. I feel like this is the door that they're opening to now pivot the narrative into Harry and Meghan coming back, saying like, look, they thought that they could do this on their own, but clearly they can't. And now they have to come back. This is how I see them shifting this narrative, or at least this might be testing the waters, but don't fall for it. Where some couples moderate each other's responses, the one more inclined to conciliation, the other to confrontation, Harry and Meghan share similar reflexes. Amid rising tensions, and with Harry ever more fearful for her safety, Meghan and Harry did not surrender the idea of royal service, but began to reimagine it. Perhaps they could base themselves on another continent, still doing work for the Queen, but beyond the reach of the press. Meghan had proved a natural at royaling. Her in-laws might recoil from her hugs, but strangers on the street leaned into them. It severely hampered their search for solutions that they batted away good advice with the bad, reading interventions as the product of dusty palace thinking or inter-household rivalries. Confronted with an innovative proposal, often the first reflex of officials is to squash or temper it. In his 20s, Charles tangled with the courtiers who tried to block his first substantial initiative, the prince's trust. It would be too political, they argued. Princess Anne offers an object lesson too, combining her sporting career and equestrian businesses with service as a working royal. A hybrid model can succeed, and not all ideas that bend or break with tradition destabilize the monarchy. Yes, said an insider when I pointed this out, but that depends on the royal in question. Anne is staunch and sensible. Harry, his mother's son. Meghan would not have respected boundaries. Left to their own devices, they risk becoming more Andrew and Sarah than Anne and Timothy. In my opinion, I think we're past that point. Harry and Meghan are worse than Andrew and Sarah. That analysis, widely shared by family and officials, meant the institution spent less energy on helping the Sussexes expand their role and more on containing them. Harry and Meghan, in turn, continued to misread their situation, assuming that courtiers were misrepresenting them to the top decision-makers, the Queen, Charles, even William, who would surely see the merit of their case if given the chance. After all, the Sussexes connected with younger and diverse populations across the realm's demographics, left cold by other Windsors. The monarchy needed them. There were, however, other issues at play. The prospect of change loomed large with Elizabeth soon to pass the crown to Charles, already in his 70s and expected to reign for, at most, a couple of decades. The paramount concern of these principals and their officials was to smooth the way for the next two kings and their consorts. In this context, the volatile, limelight-stealing Harry and Meghan appeared not jewels in the crown, but risks. Megxit, a term rejected by Harry as sexist, therefore became inevitable. Palace briefing began to suggest that Meghan was an acquired taste and quite opinionated. There were news items about staff departures and a contemptuous nickname applied to Meghan, Duchess Difficult. Who does that remind you of? These days, Diana is regarded in some quarters as a secular saint. To her younger son, she is an inspiration and a warning. Meghan has studiously avoided such direct parallels, at least in public, but that has not protected her from allegations that she angles to position herself as a new Diana, nor from belittling comparisons with her. An Instagram post in which Meghan wears a Northwestern University sweatshirt provoked howls of rage because Diana had been photographed in the same sweatshirt. That may be Meghan's most pathetic attempt yet at cosplaying Harry's mother, snarled one commenter. She is completely psychotic now, fumed another. Thousands of similar posts ignored the fact that Meghan, unlike Diana, was a Northwestern alumna with a degree in international relations and theater studies. Meghan is no Diana, a palace insider muttered to me recently. Okay, let me go ahead and pause here. Don't you see how they continue to keep reinforcing this narrative of Meghan going to Northwestern and graduating there, which I don't believe for a second, especially with the so-called degrees that they say that she graduated with. We all know that at Northwestern, they don't have international relations dual major. You can't graduate with that. It was international studies. So as a journalist and a writer, this woman is pushing pure propaganda. If this sentiment chimes with you, think about the venom directed at Diana, like the Sunday Mirror column about her written the day before her death, which hit newsstands the next morning. It's a pity Gucci don't make designer faces zips, wrote Carol Malone. Then, when Diana was on the verge of opening her ill-informed mouth and causing an international incident, an increasingly frequent occurrence these days, she could just keep her trap shut. Diana was no Diana either, until she could no longer speak for herself. In this sense, Meghan has indeed come to resemble Diana, the iteration of 1997. The crown jewel turned pariah, the benchmark against whom other royal women are measured and found by comparison to pass muster. Now, isn't that something? That is the same Carol Malone who recently made that comment about Doria being in jail and was not the one who raised her. She had to come back and issue an apology and make the statement that it was Doria who raised her. Now, one would think because the Markles love the spotlight, they would come out swinging, but crickets. Not a word pushing back saying that it was Thomas Markle who raised her. So now do you see the games that are being played with the public? Now, some of you may or may not remember me talking about Heather Wong, but I'd like to bring up again that she joined as assistant private secretary to Prince Harry in September 2016, 1 month before it was announced he and Meghan were dating. Now, Heather Wong is an American who was the public affairs specialist, international affairs, at the U.S. Treasury, and as Deputy Assistant Secretary of Public Affairs at the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, during the Obama administration until 2013. Now, the big question here is, how did she end up across the pond working for Prince Harry? Well, it turns out today, I found that former communications secretary to, at the time, Prince Charles, now King Charles, and also did communications for William and Harry too, Patty Harrison, hired this woman through his little discreet communications firm called Milltown Partners. Now, one thing that concerns me here is that I couldn't find any evidence of Heather Wong's U.S. security clearance ever being revoked. And with treasonous Mayorkas at the head of Department of Homeland Securities, it's no wonder that this same department is the one that's stonewalled disclosing anything on Harry's visa. I'd like to reiterate that Heather Wong was involved with Harry and Meghan migrating over to the United States during Megxit. Heather Wong then went over to Travelers and hung out there until February of 2021, right after the Autopen president was installed into office. Of all people to have on your team that would come in handy for if you were coming over to the United States to undermine the will of the American people, it would be somebody from DHS and the former Obama administration. Duh. But I suppose we're going to continue to keep believing the slop that we're being fed, that Charles is not political, even though tomorrow Vladimir Zelensky will be meeting with the king for his 8th time. Okay. At this point, I think all of us are just sick and tired of all of these media games that are being played to manipulate the public. And you can't tell me that the royal family doesn't have a clue as to what's going on here.
evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk
your
about
elections
you
in
went
this
to
country.
court.
We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked,
Mr.
and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, let's please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know.
I've sat in the rain with you for an hour, on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr. President,
a country can never be great with a dishonest press.
We traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
Anyway, thought I would bring this to you today. Hope you enjoyed it. Definitely let me know your thoughts below. As always, I will be back with more content, but until then, please be safe and I'll talk to you later. Bye.
It was such a fraud.